Hello, I'm Raul Julia, and I'm here at the Martin Luther King High School in New York City, and I'm here to share with the students about the Hunger Project and the end of hunger in the planet. And I was here talking to them and showing them a video about the distinctions between famine and chronic persistent hunger. And it is my privilege to be able to share this with you, this talk that we had. We were able to videotape. So in a moment, that is what you're going to see. Thank you. The problem of hunger is something that exists today, not only all over the world, but in our own cities. I work with the Hunger Project, and the Hunger Project was formed in 1977 to address what was needed about ending hunger, not only in our own cities, but all over the world. We realized that all the experts, all the studies that had been done, the National Academy of Sciences, the President's Commission on World Hunger, they all came with the same conclusion, that we could actually end hunger in the planet. And all that was needed was the popular will, of the will of people like you and me to do it, to go for it. I mean, years ago, before we put a man on the moon, everybody thought it was impossible. You know, even scientists kept saying, no, you can't put a man on the moon. I mean, the metal, there's no metal in the world that you can make a spaceship, put him up into the moon, and then when it comes down, it's going to burn. There's no way that you can put a man on the moon. And everybody said, there's no way that you can put a man on the moon. Like they're saying today, and they've been saying for many years, there's no way that you can end hunger. There's always going to be hunger, like death and taxes. Well, if you have that attitude, of course you can't do it. If you think there's no way you can do something, guess what? There's no way you can do it, because how you say it, it's how it's going to happen. If I say there's no way I'm going to succeed, there's no way I'm going to make a good living in life, there's no way I'm going to get past this course, there's no way I'm going to graduate, guess what? That's what's going to happen. There's no way. Because it's what you say that makes the difference. And when people said, we're going to put a man on the moon, a lot of people laughed and said, no way. A lot of people laughed and said, no way you're going to put a man on the moon, man, forget it. There's nothing invented yet that you can get into and go to the moon. Guess what? They invented it. If we can put a man on the moon, we can put food on somebody's plate. Another thing, there's no way you can end slavery. Now everybody takes for granted that there's no way you could have slavery today, right? Now we take it for granted. In those days, slavery was the economy. If you didn't have slavery, you couldn't survive economically. There's no way. You needed slaves to survive economically. No way you could end slavery until a group of people like you and me got together and said, we're going to do it. I don't care what anybody says. We are going to do it. And what I'm saying is that we, you and me, we can end hunger, not only in our cities, but all over the world, just by saying we are going to do it. Because the solutions are there, the cures for the diseases that come out of hunger are there, everything is in place, and we have now, in this time in the history of humanity, we have the means to end hunger. And we have an opportunity like no other human beings in the planet ever had, which is to end hunger. And we are going to be the ones that did it. We are going to be the ones that did it. And that is amazingly important and very exciting. So what the Hunger Project is about generating that will, that commitment to end hunger in the planet by the year 2000. And we do it through education, communication, talks like this. We're videotaping this so that this will go all over the country, to students all over the country. You're on TV right now. You're being watched. This might be the beginning of something really very special between you and me. And the idea is to generate that commitment, to do everything you can, not to say, oh, no, I'm too small, I don't have enough power, you know, the government, the budget, Bush, I don't know, whatever their names are over there in Washington. I mean, I can't do anything. These guys, they got the power, let them do it. Well, guess what? They're not going to do it unless we tell them to do it. We have the power, and you are the ones, the young people of today, that are still open to possibility. You're still open to the possibilities of things. Older people sort of like have gotten a little closed in, and they're resigned to living the best way they can, you know, and maybe it'll turn out all right in the end. That is not what does it. It's the youth that's going to do it. And you are the ones in the year 2000, when we end hunger, that you are the ones that are going to be celebrating. While the old guys like us, we're just going to be in our deathbed saying, oh, I wish I had done it. And I'm not kidding. This is what's happening all over the world. Now we have 6.2 million people all over the world that are committed to ending hunger in the planet. And you should see what's happening all over. The commitment that is being generated. A village in India has committed itself to end its own hunger. Over 100,000 people committed themselves to end their own hunger by 1992. And out of that village, that will be an example to generate other villages to commit themselves to ending hunger, and eventually we can end hunger all over India. There's an office here of the Hunger Project that is committed totally to the homeless and the hungry in New York City, and like that there are offices all over the country. So it's really happening, and you can join that commitment. You can join that huge movement. Recently, we had the biggest summit of world leaders at the United Nations. 71 world leaders got together and said, we're going to address the problem of children. We're not going to talk about the budget. We're not going to talk about the war, the Saddam Hussein and the war over there. We're going to talk only about children. 40,000 children that die every single day in this planet. While I'm talking here, there's hundreds of children that are dying every minute from preventable causes. It's not that they can't, that there's no solution. They're dying from preventable causes. And the world leaders, for the first time in history, got together to address that problem. So things are happening. And the more people get behind it, I believe the more we're going to make it a reality. Now it's a possibility. Ending hunger is now a possibility. It's no longer inevitable. It's no longer a resignation that it's not going to happen. It's actually the world leaders all over the world and millions of people all over the world are saying, we can do it. Let's do it. Like we put a man on the moon, like we ended slavery, like we ended smallpox in the world. There's no more smallpox. I remember when I was a kid, it was like you know, like AIDS today. In those days, it was smallpox. Smallpox was like the big disease, the terrible disease. And I remember getting vaccinated for smallpox because if you got it, you died. All of a sudden, there's no more smallpox in the world. It's gone. So there's nothing that we cannot do if we put our minds to it. One of the things that the Hunger Project is doing is we show a videotape. This videotape has been shown to millions and millions and millions of people all over the world. It's been shown in Russia, in Eastern Europe, you name it. The tape has been shown on television, in private presentations with people that explain or answer questions. We're going to have an opportunity to do that. And the tape is 11 minutes, and it deals with one of a very important point into ending hunger, which is when we think of hungry people, we think of famine victims. When we think of hungry people, we think of emaciated children, skinny children that haven't eaten in weeks or even months, emaciated people. We think of hunger in that way, famine victims. But the truth is that the famine victims are only 10% of the thousands and thousands and thousands of people that die of hunger every day. The famine victims are only 10%. The other 90% are people that are dying silently of chronic persistent hunger, which is, you don't notice them, that they don't look that emaciated. An 8-year-old kid might look like he's 4 because it's malnutrition that's destroying their bodies. Lack of adequate food, lack of nutritious food, polluted water, whatever, and they're slowly dying every single day, and nobody knows about them. Some kids die from dehydration, which is caused by diarrhea, and dehydration can be cured by a 10-cent packet of salts that cost 10 cents. All over the world, about 7,000 children die every single day from dehydration, something that is easily curable. In our cities, we have children that are dying from malnutrition because they don't have enough to eat. They go to bed hungry at least twice a week in our own cities. So the idea is also to have videotapes and show them to people and show what's happening, the reality, and show also the distinctions between famine and chronic persistent hunger.
We are living at an historic moment. For the first time in recorded history, we have the resources, the solutions, and the capacity to end the persistence of hunger on our planet. Not just to work on the problem, not just to relieve suffering, but to actually end hunger once and for all. For most of civilization's existence, the end of hunger was only for dreamers. Almost everyone saw hunger and starvation as inevitable. Most thought, too many people, not enough food. Although some few remain behind the times, today it is no longer possible to make a sound argument that the world cannot feed itself. Enough food is currently grown to meet the needs of every child, woman, and man. In fact, we are producing enough food to feed the projected world population of the year 2000 and beyond. And new technologies promise even greater production. Yet hunger persists on a devastating scale. Every day, hunger takes the lives of 35,000 people. 24 every minute. Most are children. More people have died as a result of hunger in the past 3 years alone than were killed in World Wars I and II combined. Despite all of our sincere efforts to help the hungry, the truth is that we are ineffective at ending hunger because much of our thinking about the issue of hunger is limited and inaccurate. For most of us, when we hear the word hunger, we picture the famine victims we have all seen on the evening news. Yet famine is only the tip of the iceberg, accounting for only 10% of hunger's daily death toll. The remaining 90%, almost all of the deaths caused by hunger, result from chronic persistent hunger. While famines usually command our attention, chronic persistent hunger rarely does. It is a silent holocaust. Chronically hungry people often appear simply to be poor. They look like they will survive, but daily tens of thousands do not. Each and every day, the number of children killed by chronic persistent hunger is equal to 100 jumbo jets, each carrying 240 children, all crashing to the earth. But these jet crashes never make the headlines. Somehow, despite our vast worldwide communications network, this unparalleled disaster happens out of sight and out of mind. Given the enormous scope of this human tragedy, having an accurate understanding of the nature of this problem is truly a matter of life and death. Particularly important is a clear understanding of the distinction between famine and chronic, persistent hunger. While famines occur sporadically, chronic, persistent hunger is an ongoing daily tragedy. Famines occur locally in specific geographic areas. Chronic hunger is a global condition that spans continents, persisting in more than 70 countries in Latin America, Asia, and Africa. Famines disrupt people's lives suddenly, drawing them away from their homes and often crowding them into camps. Chronic, persistent hunger is a constant condition of life, inseparable from the daily experience of hundreds of millions of people. In a famine, people often die from outright starvation, their bodies emaciated from an acute lack of food. Chronic, persistent hunger goes unnoticed, precisely because these hungry people are not starving to death. But like a cancer, chronic, persistent hunger erodes the body's strength and resistance. In the end, common colds, ordinary childhood diseases, and even simple diarrhea become massive killers. Even when not fatal, chronic hunger dramatically diminishes and shortens life. Mothers and fathers are considered elders if they live to the age of 45. Children may appear to be healthy 4-year-olds when they are actually 8. Their physical and mental growth stunted by chronic, persistent hunger. Day in and day out, chronically hungry people do not get enough protein or calories to sustain themselves. Often parasites keep them from absorbing the food they do get. Their systems are deprived of sufficient vitamins and nutrients. Each year, for example, 250,000 children go blind simply due to lack of vitamin A.
Normally, a child up to 5 years old will have circumference of 16 centimeters. A severely malnourished child would be about 12 and less. This child now has 10. This will tell us that this child is suffering from third-degree malnutrition, which means the child will have lost 40% of his weight. Malnutrition and other related diseases is one of the highest causes of death. It's so frustrating because most of these diseases are preventable.
Because so many hungry infants die at an early age, parents have large families to ensure that at least a few of their children will live to adulthood. In countries where hunger continues to persist, mothers give birth to more than twice as many children than do mothers in countries where hunger has ended. Because the circumstances which cause death by chronic persistent hunger are distinct from those which cause death by famine, the effective solution to each is completely different. To combat famine, we provide emergency food and relief. While famines remain a real threat, the world community is becoming more effective at meeting these emergencies. Today, when a famine strikes, the world responds. In 1988, the international community mobilized successfully to avert a famine in Ethiopia. Now, famines can be anticipated, dealt with rapidly, and even prevented. Yet a similar global effort to end chronic persistent hunger has not been launched. At least 500 million people face hunger every day, not because of a drought, flood, or other emergency, but because they do not have the resources to buy or grow the food they need. No matter how hard they work, chronically hungry people do not have the chance to be productive. To state it simply, they do not have the opportunity to bring their own hunger to an end.
But without opportunity, hungry people cannot end their hunger. To provide that opportunity, people must have access to education, to health, to pure water and effective sanitation, to protective vaccination, to family planning services. Opportunity means access to land, to seeds, to agricultural tools. Opportunity can be provided by agricultural research and by the knowledge acquired through extension services of improved farming techniques and irrigation methods. Opportunity will be created by essential rural infrastructure, by roads, by transport, by storage and processing facilities. Opportunity requires credit for the purchase of land, for the improvement of irrigation, for the acquisition of equipment, of livestock, of poultry.
With opportunity, full, free, and open opportunity, hungry people can generate the resources they need to feed themselves and their families, and to bring their own hunger to an end. When hungry people are given a chance, hunger will be ended, and the needless deaths of 35,000 people every day will be prevented. For the first time in world history, the end of hunger is possible. By acting now, we can turn this possibility into a reality. What needs to be done is to call forth a new era for ending hunger, an era in which the critical distinction between famine and chronic persistent hunger becomes so widely known that decisive and effective actions are taken, an era in which providing opportunity for hungry people becomes one of the priorities on the economic and political agenda, an era in which the necessary resources are reallocated so that hungry people can end their own hunger. This job will not be easy. It is a tough challenge, but it is a job worth doing, a job that embodies the greatest expression of what it means to be human. And above all else, it is a job that can be done.
So there's nothing that we cannot do if we put our minds to it. And the way to start is right where you are, right in your school. Many schools have created clubs, youth ending hunger clubs, that communicate with the Hunger Project and get information and enroll. Enrollment is very important, getting other people to educate themselves, commitment to work at it. Work in the neighborhoods. Some people work with the synagogues or their churches or their clubs in their neighborhoods to start step by step where you are, and then generate that commitment and that will to end hunger by the year 2000. It's really about opportunity. So people don't want handouts. You know, people don't want charity. People want to be given the opportunity to help themselves. People want to be given the opportunity to work, because what really people want to do is work, and work for their families and feed themselves, not get handouts from people, because that takes away from their dignity. So that's what it's really about. I mean, the Berlin Wall didn't come down by itself, you know? And the communist dictatorships in Europe, they didn't come down by themselves. People like you and me, they were no different than you and me. They brought the wall down, and they brought the communist dictatorships down. So don't tell me you can't do it, because you're no different from those people that brought the Berlin Wall down. And believe me, the world has never known a joy greater than when there is no more hunger in the planet.